Okay, so we are live with, I don't know, we haven't really got a name for our weekly series yet, but Han and I are doing a weekly series which basically covers MCP, MCP apps, and basically just covers everything that we're seeing. We're obviously super deep in the space, and so we cover a lot and see a lot. So basically, we want to have this weekly series just to talk about it, to talk about the key things that we've been seeing, key updates for the industry, things that you need to know to be aware of to understand what's happening with the MCP and MCP app space. So great to chat again, huh?
I am so happy that we're doing this because so many people ping me and was like, "What do you guys talk about?" Or like, I want to be in the conversation. So I'm so happy that we just post our like conversation on the internet. This is
Right,
awesome.
right. Well, we have like weekly catch up anyway, right? So we were like, well, we might as well just record it and then just put it on YouTube, put it on channels, and let everyone else in. So um, a lot's happened this week. So we were just, I mean, things we can chat about. We can chat about the growth of the MCP app ecosystem. We're seeing a lot of growth across both ChatGPT and Claude, so we can chat about that. Um, Brian Chesky, I think that's how you pronounce his surname.
Nice. Yeah, that is
Yeah,
interesting.
the Airbnb CEO, he has come out with some comments around the direction that he sees the chatbot experience evolving. Um, and obviously, it's very linked to this space, which we'll get into, so we can cover that. There's also been, I think, just some interesting developments in both ChatGPT and Claude ecosystems overall. And also, something else I wanted to chat about is something called Conway. Now, this is something that Anthropic is doing. This is actually was part of the leaked source code that got released maybe even about a month ago from Anthropic. But I want to bring it up again because I think we're very soon going to have something like this come live from Anthropic, and it's a really big deal for making your product accessible to the people that use Anthropic, the people that are going to be building and using agents. So I want to bring that back up as well. Um, I think that's
Yeah, and
everything.
the traffic is gonna be insane. So yeah, let's
Yeah,
get started. Let's see. So
awesome.
how
Let's
many new apps coming out this past week?
Yeah, a lot. So let me share my screen. So this is our MCP app tracker. Exciting that we actually have a new version of this coming out very soon. So we'll make sure to share that with everyone. But you can see here, this is the growth chart of MCP apps, which honestly is just awesome to see because it's obviously been like a long time since we've been working and thinking about this. But we're now at 1,100 ChatGPT apps. So huge growth. We're seeing at the moment, I think we even just within the last week, we've had over 200 apps, I believe. Yeah, even just the last week, there we go. So yeah, huge growth. And actually, this doesn't show the growth for Anthropic. So Anthropic, I think even in the last 30 days, we saw a jump. They've had nearly, I think their app store has doubled. So they went from, I'll get the exact numbers, but around 215 to about 420, I think we're at now, roughly. So both ecosystems are just growing a huge amount, which is really cool to see.
And I think that, all these labs are going to take a long time to figure out, what is, like when you expose like MCP onto a chat, you're exposing yourself for stuff like prompt attack, so they're gonna take some time to figure out like what is the right security and what would be the right security and privacy for all these apps. But the moment that they got it figured out, I think that we're gonna see a lot more apps getting approved, and I think that the app store is gonna get like more and more competitive as we have more apps.
Yeah, totally agree. And something else that I've been speaking to, I was actually speaking to someone just before this, and generally asking about, okay, like if I want to get my connector there, can I? Is it going to be easy? One of the things that I think I'm seeing, at least, I'd be interested to see what you think, Han, is like in ChatGPT in general, there was like, as you can see, within this chart, there was a long time where it was really difficult to get your app accepted because they were just, I suppose, a little bit more picky with who they were selecting, right? So like particularly unless you were a big brand or you were a partner of theirs, you weren't really getting in the door. Whereas now we're seeing just this huge pickup of apps that are getting accepted naturally broadly. ChatGPT seems to have taken almost a policy now of let's just bring apps in. And that's really good to see. Whereas I'm seeing, at least on the Anthropic side, they're still quite selective. So they are accepting new apps. So I spoke to a company called Send, super interesting company. They've built basically within Claude, help you to create documents, any type of document with shareable links. And they're a brand new startup and they're getting accepted. So like new companies are definitely there, but I'd say like it feels like Anthropic is still kind of in that like bit more selective period. While OpenAI, I think they're a bit more like they've just opened the floodgates almost.
I am so happy that OpenAI take that approach because I don't know if you follow like the Apple App Store in the very beginning.
Mm,
Most of the app was really bad in the beginning,
yeah,
but then
right.
people have to explore to be able to figure out what is working. And if you don't allow people the opportunity to explore, you're not gonna have good apps. So I'm so glad that OpenAI is taking that approach. Um, yeah, and it's time to get building, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And actually, I think we can maybe talk a little bit about um, like the app experience at the moment, and then where it might go directionally. And there's been a lot of debate about this. So, for those that are maybe newer to the MCP app space, very simply put, an MCP app at the moment is built on top of an MCP server. It means that you can have external data, external tools exposed within the major chatbots. So it uses the same standard MCP apps. What it does is it creates basically an iframe, a UI layer on top of the MCP server. The way that works at the moment is it's what's called a standard iframe, right? So you can't, it's not generative in any way. It exposes, a UI widget, which is actually separate from the model. So it's kind of its own standalone iframe. And that has led to obviously each model company has had different implementations of that. And actually, like I think Anthropic, for anyone that's tried the connectors there, have done a frankly far better job than OpenAI around implementing the spec. They work a lot smoother. But right now, they are standard iframes effectively. And maybe Han, you can speak more to that. But then, I'll then bring up afterwards maybe what Brian mentioned around the direction. But perhaps you want to talk a little bit more about just I suppose that the way the MCP apps work at the moment, and then maybe where it might go going
Yeah,
forward.
so I don't know if you are like the people listening to these, like know my background, but we originally started with something called Fractal MCP. It's more of like our opinion on what we think the UI would look like. And that was like, I guess before MCP apps become the standard. One of the idea that we have is like like the model is if you have the model to generate every single UI components, that's not a good idea because it's the same as going to the grocery store and every single time the grocery is arranged differently. You don't want that kind of unpredictability, but at the same time I'm like a true believer in like personalized UI. Like I may not need all the information and you probably need like all the informations. We have different needs, and the great thing about AI right now is that AI is smart enough to put together like disregard about like AI capability, because I think AI capability is going to be significantly improved. It's just what we want as human, right? We want something that is familiar, so we're not like go all over the UI to find what we need, but we also want something personalized. So I think that the future of MCP apps, which I bet is going to evolve still, is going to be something that you would like return the components, but then the AI would be able to put together those components into something that is personalized to you. So I think that's where the direction is going. But we're still in the super super early day of how this is going. And let's get back to Brian Chesky because I think some of
Yeah,
this is
right.
super
Yeah. I
interesting.
mean, what you're saying is spot on. And funnily enough, when we recorded our last one of these, which is when we were both in San Francisco, about what's that, probably 3 weeks ago now, maybe.
Yeah.
We were talking about exactly this. So, in the future, when you have these things to be more agentic, you're not going to have a standard iframe, right? You're going to have a mix of generative UI. You're going to have a mix of these components, and I think
Be an iframe. It can be an iframe, but the
right.
components inside the iframe will be put together by the AI.
Exactly right. And it won't just be completely generative, right? You can have components from the brand and things like this, but it just needs to be not that kind of rigid component that it currently is now. So let me bring up what Brian said. So he was on TBPN, and I won't play the clip, but we can share it in the comments just below. But basically, he was saying that right now he doesn't believe that the interface that you've got for ChatGPT is actually the right interface, and actually just a chatbot in general isn't the right interface. And he definitely has called out, like, they really do believe in the fact that the future is going to be agents, and there's going to be a way that interface works, but he just doesn't see this basic chatbot being the image. And actually, he then sort of says how he believes that there's going to be these much richer interfaces that are going to be able to actually show a user what they want to see, because no one wants to just do, and I think he says it here, all of their travel booking through iMessage. It just doesn't make any sense. But actually, one thing that he kind of ironically or unironically says, he never really mentions ChatGPT apps during this, but he's basically describing them. But my read on it is kind of more that I think they've tried it, and I know that they have. And in the past, he has commented on ChatGPT apps, and I think Airbnb have made a specific decision not to build for that experience right now. So kind of explaining what we've been talking about, which is, they aren't necessarily optimal. There's going to be an evolution, but I think he correctly points out it's just going to be so much better than a chatbot. Like no one wants to book travel with just text. But just very interesting to see him comment and talk
And
about it.
I follow that conversations because Brian Chesky posted that on X, and then someone else like reply is like, because he was like, oh, we try it and it's not possible, and someone else was like, no, like I'm a designer at Apple, I tried it and it's 100% possible, and Brian Chesky literally like replied and was like, DM me. So I think that a lot of like, this is why like some of these engineers that get paid like tens of millions of dollars to work, because there's some people that understand what frontier models can do, and there's some people that you know are not in AI and think that it's not possible. And for the people that understand how to make it possible, it's still very few. I think eventually a lot of people will know, but I do think that a lot of these may be with the way that they implement the MCP app, to see how flexible they are. But yeah, I think that the future that he was describing is exactly MCP app. It's like, no, like you want a UI, you want the agent to drive the experience, but whenever the agents want to present something that needs your input, they are going to give you a UI. Like no one goes shopping with text.
Yeah. Yeah. It's exactly right. And I think that we're going to see an evolution of it. My view is that the model companies know this better than anyone else. They're not just going to stay as chatbots. They're going to need a UI interactive layer whenever a human is in the loop. So agents obviously interact differently, and that's a separate experience. But humans are going to be in the loop for a lot of these things whenever a decision needs to be made or whether a final output needs to be delivered, and it needs to be in a kind of evolved way. Now, it'll be interesting to see how we get there, right? Because there's going to need to be an evolution of the MCP app standard. Each model company is going to need to think about how they want to get it developed. There's obviously all these people that have also built these MCP apps already. So what is going to be the additional development work to kind of get them to this new standard or new design? So there's going to be some evolution here. But I think one thing that's clear, and I'm particularly seeing this from Anthropic, is they do not seem to be moving off MCP. I'm seeing that very consistently.
Actually, that's something that I want to talk about too, because I think that the reason why MCP adoption has been like, I have a lot of this conversation on Twitter where people just misunderstand what MCP are. and people was like, oh, like MCP is like eating up like your context, they're like so like token inefficient. All of those has been solved. So obviously, like there's like like AI is moving such a fast pace that something that is like 3 months ago, like a lot of people still do not know about. But like the token issues has been solved. And as a matter of fact, like like the discussion about like CLI versus MCP, you cannot scale like to like tens of thousands of CLI, but you can scale to tens of thousands of MCP. So I don't see MCP is going anywhere.
Yeah, 100%. And we were also seeing it with like Anthropic's just general direction. So I mentioned at the top of this that there was a reference around this code leak, and I'll share some interesting links in the comments around where people can go and look through this. But in short, what happened was there was, I think it was about a month ago now, or maybe 3 weeks ago, there was a code leak from Anthropic. So it was like over 500,000 lines of code that accidentally got exposed. And there was a lot of discussion around like security incidents and various things, but like people that actually read into the leak, it was like, what is the leak saying? In short, there's been an overview or insight from the code that Anthropic is building an always on agent. And we knew this was coming, but it's interesting to see the way they've done it. But the most interesting component of it is, and the general kind of like name for this, I suppose the code name is something called Conway, but they have what's called these external packages that sit as part of these agents. And what that allows is for people to basically build their own connectors. So they're actually doubling down on MCP. They're doubling down on the connector and a variation of the connector store. And what that means is that you can turn these connectors not just into sort of like data and assets, but into actual agents. And you can then basically potentially even monetize your connector in a better way, because basically they're seeing, and I think the play is reasonably clear, you're going to have these stores like Anthropic's, like OpenAI's, that are going to compete basically with each other to try and pull as many people to build on their ecosystem as possible. Now, they're going to keep MCP as consistent, but I sort of would predict by the sounds of it, depending on, it feels like the further that each of these platforms develop, the wider that the implementation is going to get away from potentially something that is quite standardized. But that's just a prediction on my side. I suspect over time, while there's some consistency, it's going to take a bit to get each one to be developed for the right ecosystem. But basically, from the leaked source code, which has kind of been forgotten about, and I would encourage people to get back into what was released there, we're seeing a double down from Anthropic on external connectors, bringing in data, MCP apps, and maybe that coincides with this kind of evolution of the UI spec as well. I have no idea when this comes out. This was a month ago. These guys move pretty fast, so could be soon.
I
But I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I don't see MCP going anywhere anyway, because there must be a way for you to be able to bring in like private external data. If any of these models are going to be useful. Actually, I think that these models are plenty useful already. The bottleneck isn't like how smart the model is. It's like how can we have them actually do things that is meaningful, that we anything that you have to copy and paste right now are going to go away. And it reminds me of like, like the early day when like you go to ChatGPT and ask it to write some piece of code for you, and then you copy it
Yeah,
onto,
right.
and then you edit it a little
Yeah,
bit,
my God, you remember that?
and then there come Cursor, right? Like Cursor was like, oh, like we're going to read your code, and eventually the more data, the more private data that you are going to bring into these agents, the more useful the agent are going to be. And the more pre-made MCPs and all that stuff that you give them, because like most people are not that technical. Like there's like so many the number of workforce that are technical versus non-technical is like the technical people are so small. I don't expect these people are be able to build their own agents. I think that say if you're like a small business owner, you're not gonna be able to be very technically build your own agents. So I think that all these models and all these agents has to be easy enough for them to be able to build their own.
Yeah, 100%. But I think what you'll also see is, I think, and this is the play that Anthropic is doing, is who's going to build these agents and where are they going to live? And actually, you know, if you get everyone to build like the sales agent and the marketing agent and the etc. on the Anthropic stack, and then but you make people be able to monetize those agents so it can actually exist in their ecosystem, monetized in their ecosystem, use external data in their ecosystem. Um, that's their walled garden that they can just monetize for everything effectively. Because right now you're not the way that people build these agents and use Anthropic models to build agents is all external from that platform, pretty much. And I think that's the move they're trying to make with this Conway announcement. Is not only good for MCP apps, but it's like people building actual agents in their stack and creating a kind of an incentive for people to do that, because you can just release it to everyone that uses Anthropic. Um,
100%. Because, like if you're a small business owner, you have a restaurant, you're not going to be able to build your own agents. You probably hear someone, it's like, hey, like you have this agent,
yeah,
this
yeah, yeah,
use it, and then you would use it and you're like, oh, like this like doesn't 100% meet my needs, so I'm gonna make a little modification for it. And luckily, like cloud is like incredible, cloud code is incredible at coding, that they can just update the agents a little bit, so that you have like the app store, but you probably will have like a personalization aspect of the app store as well.
yeah. Totally agree. And actually, maybe there's slightly adjacent, I suppose, to this conversation, but I think it is nonetheless interesting because I think you touched on it, which is basically this week and a bit into last. Both Anthropic and OpenAI have launched huge partnerships with investment banks and consultants to effectively build out or get use of the models. And basically, it just achieves to exactly what you just mentioned, which is like, the bottleneck at this point is not the model. The bottleneck is, which is just clear from the billions that they're investing into this, is getting people to know how to use the models and get it implemented in business. And for me, it was super interesting to see, because particularly with the OpenAI announcement, like I used to work at Capgemini and then doing strategy consulting. Capgemini is one of the partners in the announcement alongside McKinsey and Bain. And they also have, big investment banks are in there as well. And like, I can just see it from both sides. Like when we were working on these huge transformation projects, um, you know, it would always be the same consistent thing, which is you build a huge system. First of all, you have to know what to build. Then you build a huge system. It takes ages to do it. And then it's actually like, how do you get this used? How do you get it implemented? What's the change management around it? How do you upskill people? How do you do the training? That would be like not quite as big as the budget, but like in terms of any digital transformation, that line item would be a significant amount just to make sure the technology is used. And it would always be difficult to do. And that's before like AI comes in, where like what's clear is that you can't just slap AI onto things. You need to do whole system reprocess design, data augmentation to make sure everything is structured and can be used properly, authentication and access and controls, on top of then the change management and the building of the solution. So anyway, it's just interesting that these companies have almost just become consultancies. I mean, that's basically what they're going to be doing. I mean, it's engineering, but it's consulting as well.
I just feel like this is like gonna be the bottleneck, and whoever that is smart is going to jump on it. That is the technology right now is moving so fast, like beyond the number of people who know how to use it. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why like we have all this consultancy, right? Because the people who are at these companies do not know. And honestly, like anyone that is not part of like the frontier lab, um, it's like already behind,
Yeah, 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 yeah. But I think the takeaway for this conversation is, and what the read should be for anyone that's looking to get more distribution through AI platforms, is Anthropic and OpenAI are leaning in heavily with the biggest backers in investment banking and consultancies. These investment bankers, is the reason they're there is because they own all the companies that need transformation. Um,
Yeah.
these companies will be everywhere. ChatGPT, OpenAI's tokens, Claude, Anthropic's tokens, they will be everywhere, the coding agents, codecs, etc. So if you want to get access to everyone that's going to have these systems, like their usage is just going to go through the roof across all these major enterprises. Google's obviously going to compete, but at the moment, it's a 2 to 3 horse race. Microsoft as well in some elements. They've obviously got a huge lock in, but the size of the market that you have access to if you have your app in the ChatGPT App Store, you have a plugin in Codex, you have your app in Claude, is just going to go up and up and up. So actually, it's great news for anyone that's building MCP apps and having their connectors in there, because your market is just going to significantly rise as they expand into more and more companies.
Yeah, 100%.
One thing that I wanted to show, because I've got two other things that I thought could be interesting to talk about. One is just something cool that I saw that I thought I would just share. And then the second thing is Claude organic distribution. So this is what arguably the biggest thing that's happening in this space right now, and it's the biggest, I think, thing since we last chatted, Han. So that's obviously an area that we're extremely deep in. So I can also share just some insights that we have just from the early days of what we're seeing from Claude Organic. So
Yes, please. I
first of
think every
all,
single person that I talked to that wanted to build like the MCP apps, the core reason is that they want distribution. So understanding how this organic distribution is working would be amazing.
yeah, and I can run through we're running thousands and thousands of prompts every day to understand how this is working and who's getting share at the moment. So I will share what we're seeing quickly though. I saw this is a small thing, but quite interesting nonetheless. So this is the Claude desktop app. And this is a new section called live artifacts. So whenever you're prompting in Claude, it creates artifacts. It's its own generative code. What they have now, and it's quite small, so I hope people can read it. I unfortunately can't zoom in, but this says live artifacts, and then it says create dynamic artifacts that stay up to date using live data from your connectors. So what this means, and it's just great because effectively this is another just great use case for connectors and just them getting more traction. You could see ChatGPT running the same thing eventually. Basically, you can create your own artifact. So let's say my artifact was, I don't want to have to go to I don't want to have to go to Google Analytics and Google Search Console and get two separate, analytics points for my website. I want my own custom dashboard to only show me like these couple of things. But I want connected data to supply that. I could just spin up my own artifact showing me just the data that I want on my website from Google Analytics to Google Search Console. That will have a persistent state. So that artifact can remain live and present. I can always refer back to it, but it will always stream live data from those two connectors. So this could be for anything, right? You've got super interesting connectors in there, like CDC data, loads of other financials. Really, the use case is sort of infinite. But it's great that they've got this now because, another good use case for connectors in the Claude ecosystem.
Did you listen to Ruben's talk on like generative UI?
One in Paris.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was I was at the event.
This reminds me of it, because like we have about this idea, because like if your connector go out and like get data from multiple places, you don't want to see like 10 different charts. You want to see them all in one chart. So it's interesting how like this is converging.
Yeah. 100%. And then, I think final thing we can chat about, unless there's anything else, is organic discovery. So like you said, obviously everyone's main reason for building these apps is really twofold. Like, can I actually get users, and then can I monetize in some way? We now have the next iteration, which is something we've all been expecting, which is organic discovery to be turned on. I've done a huge amount of content and videos on this, so I will share some more information in the comments, but I can cover some interesting stuff here. So for those that haven't seen it, effectively, both OpenAI and Anthropic, since really day one of launching this, have just mentioned that and have built really the whole apps to be available for this, which is to actually, now that you know someone's intent, rather than having to go to an app store, which almost ends up feeling archaic, you can actually understand the intent, understand which app connector might be most useful for that, and then surface it at that moment. Now, we all expected, I think, from maybe the start, because OpenAI
Yeah.
moved much faster on this, they'd probably be the ones to break this news, but actually, Anthropic beat them to it. Now, this is an example of what that looks like. And you can see here, when I'm in Claude's UI, I've just asked it, book me a hotel next weekend in London. And then it's taken that intent, and then it's decided to surface these connectors to be the ones that could potentially help me with that. And you can see here, I can directly connect to one, and then it will pull up that app, and then that app or connector will be the one that actually helps me to serve that intent. Now, there's a number of interesting things that are relevant and interesting here. A couple of things that we're seeing. So first of all, we are seeing that companies are able to get connected to a peer, not just when you mention the connector, but for a general intent. So you can see here, book me a hotel. I've not mentioned connector anywhere here. It's just appearing in general. We have a really, really deep overview of which prompts we're seeing connectors appear for and which we're not. But broadly, they're appearing for quite some range of intents at the moment. Obviously, another thing to mention is, what is it using to decide and rank connectors? So you can see here, it's decided to list 4 in this instance. Actually, interestingly, if you do another variation of this prompt, it might link more, like a company like Direct Booker, for example. And what's also interesting is this order can differ. So booking is booking a hotel. Booking.com is a partner. So actually, interestingly, they have promoted them and put them at the top. But for other categories, you can get a real variety of the rank that apps appear. And that's interesting because effectively you can expect, kind of like Google, not only do you want to appear, but you want to rank the highest. Broadly, there's more trust in ranking. And actually, worth mentioning, these lists can be quite extensive. So you've got 4 here, but I've seen lists of 10 apps, if that is something that's there. Equivalent. Additionally, if you ask something like, let me ask, I want to book a taxi, then this should only have one connector that's actually really relevant for this, which is Uber, and so it's only going to show one. So you can see here, if it's just a perfect alignment, it will actually only show one connector as well. Now, there's the next question that comes, which is, okay, that's great. How are they actually deciding this? And so we are doing effectively just extensive testing across every single app and category at the moment. We have a live dashboard that's releasing very soon, which we'll share, where basically you can start to look across each category. So let's say you take hotels, let's say you take flights, etc. Who's winning, who's ranking, for which prompts, etc. And based on our data, we're actually able to see as well why they're making this decision. What is this app doing versus this app that's allowing them to appear more? What I would say from our early data that we're seeing is this is fundamental, and it's so important for people to understand, this is fundamentally different from Google. So one of the questions that I always get asked, should I build a connector? Because, we're a new business, we don't have SEO. I see these companies that are just appearing at the top, they all have loads of SEO. How am I going to compete? Good news, broadly, and there's obviously companies like Booking, TripAdvisor, etc., that are larger companies. They have some level of preference, and I think Anthropic are doing a bit of manual here in some areas. But in other domains that I will share in the comments, you can see that there is a completely blank slate here, and it is zero to do with SEO. In fact, companies like Send, are appearing for organic prompts. They have no web presence. They are a completely native, built for agents, basically. They have a connector, they have an MCP, they have CLI. They're appearing, right? So they're using fundamentally different primitives. We call it something called agent discovery optimization. It is optimizing for agents. It's optimizing for the product-led tool call. And they're using other things to do it. From what we're seeing, both the registry So being in the registry and the description in the registry or category in the registry is important, but so are your tools. So what tools do you have? Are those tools actually able to help with the intent? Things like this. Now, I believe this is more anecdotal at this stage, but just based on what we're seeing, I think right now they're actually using the registry more than the exact tools. So there is sort of a like there is a description that you have within the registry that shows what your app does. I think they're using that a little bit more at the moment. But I think as we get an expanded view of all of the different connectors that are present, you can expect that your tools that are there, the descriptions that you have, how exactly aligned a specific tool is to a specific intent will be what ends up being chosen, because that's the best way to deliver the right experience, right? It's all to do with what tool gets called. But anyway, that's a very high level summary. It's super exciting. This is amazing for apps because it means you organically, with no paid attribution, as long as you optimize in the right way, can begin to appear for these prompts and get more users.
I see so many people, like profile the prompt companies trying to get people to optimize for like, showing up in the answers. But, like those are like so much more competitive than being on an app. Like for like how little number of apps there are on the App Store, right? I think that it's
Yeah,
way less competitive. And I wonder if it's because, like this is such a new area that people are not even aware of. But I do think that it's like really level the playground. Like if you're a startup, that you have to compete with an incumbents, but the incumbents like Airbnb, they refuse to be part of these app store. I think that there's a huge opportunity for you to like it level the playground.
100%. And this is also really important to understand. Um, if you want to be found in AI search, you have typically everyone talks about AEO, right? Answer engine optimization. That is optimizing to be in the citation. You also have GEO, which is something slightly different, but broadly similar in the same category. This is a whole new paradigm. When you are optimizing for a product-led tool call, none of these AI search platforms help you with that. They're not even aware of it, frankly. It is a whole new paradigm, and it's a different optimization surface. Your blog, your Reddit article, your LinkedIn post, these will not help you to rank in this search. It is directory, it is tool descriptions, it is MCP. You fundamentally need to track different data. You fundamentally need to optimize for different surfaces. So yeah, it's a great opportunity. Companies need to think about it. And yeah, it's like you said, very incompetitive at the moment. You have like 420 or so connectors. Compare that to, um, you know, uh, any other surface where you're millions of competition. It's a pretty interesting time to be in there.
I also think that, when you build for like citation is huge business right now because this is where AI is right now. But I don't see that AI is going to be where they are right now. I actually agree with Brian Chesky that AI is going to move to agentic. So if you're like optimizing for human using it, um, it's gonna eventually moving on to agent moving it using the tools. So you may
Exactly.
as well like just go directly to this agent using your tools.
Exactly. So like when you have agents that are doing this work, you obviously need to optimize for the citation because it's going to be producing tokens. There's going to be an output. The agent's going to be thinking what to do, but then it's going to decide, okay, I now need to take action. When it takes action, it's going to need to use tools. It's going to have to use, it could be an MCP, it could be a CLI, it could be an API. But in these main chatbots, it's whatever primitive that they use to take action, and that is MCP. It is your tools, and that is the surface that you have to optimize for. So, yeah, I think the people watching this are the ones that are early ahead of the game. And yeah, it's an exciting time, honestly, to get in there if you're a startup or even an incumbent, right? You want to make sure that you're competing because there's lots of other big companies that are in there as well. Very cool.
Amazing, great
Um,
chat.
Anything else that we won't cover? I think that's probably everything from my side, I think.
Yeah, yeah, everything from my side as well. We gotta do more of these because I think that the space is moving so fast. We need to like, keep updated with what is going on.
100%. So we've committed to be doing this weekly. So expect to hear from us next week as well on updates in the space. As you hopefully know, or if you're new, Han is co-founder of Fractal, which is lovable for MCP apps. So it builds MCP apps. You should definitely check them out. There'll be a link in the comments. I'm co-founder of agentdiscoverability.com. We help with this exact organic discovery problem. So if you want to understand, how you're ranking organically for your Claude connector against your target prompts, if you want to optimize to get organically discovered, we help with that. So there'll be links in the comments below. And I think that's everything. We'll see you next week.
Thank you guys.